We knew it was coming, but the layoffs have started at Bungie. Apparently 400 people have been let go or in the process of being let go, which is roughly half the studio. This seems to mostly affect the Destiny 2 team, which is unsurprising given that there's no game to work on anymore really, or at least there's no future content to work on. But somewhat surprisingly, it's also affected part of the Marathon team. Bungie Statement says, "With great sadness we are announcing a reduction in force as we reorganise Bungie. As the leaders of Bungie, past and present, we recognise Destiny 2 fell short of expectations these past several years. Following our final content update to Destiny 2, and with our future projects still in early incubation, we unfortunately could not continue operating at our previous size. We know this decision has a profound impact on the people affected, their families, friends and teammates. While these changes are necessary to best position the studio now and for the future, that does not lessen the difficulty of this moment or the impact it has on those affected. Later we will share more about the future with you all, but today is not that day. Today we wish to extend our gratitude and compassion to every member of the Bungie team who has been impacted and to those who remain. We hope you will do the same. Bungie." This statement does hit me as somewhat genuine. However, it isn't at all surprising what they've said. Destiny 2 did fall short of expectations, both Bungie's own expectations, I imagine, with sales and whatever, and also the community's expectations. We knew the layoffs were coming, but it is of course very sad to see. It is funny that they mention as the leaders of Bungie, past and present, because the leaders of Bungie have, at least from the community perspective, not been very good. There was also then an actual statement from Sony Interactive Entertainment, aka PlayStation Studios, from the CEO of the studio business group, Herman Hulst, and his statement, which I won't read out in full because it is rather lengthy, went into a bit more details. Basically said that now that the studio has finished with Destiny 2 and shipped the last update, they're moving on to a new future. They will continue. I think the Marathon excerpt is quite funny. So Marathon remains an important part of our portfolio, and we will continue to support the team as they build on the strong foundation established in Season 1 and 2, and as they work on incubation efforts on future projects, or for future projects. I wouldn't exactly have said the foundations for Marathon are strong, because it's not doing well from a player count perspective. However, I guess the game does seem like it's of a high quality. I've not played it, but from the people who have played it and from the gameplay I've seen, it at least seems like it's high quality, so I guess if that's what you're referring to with the strong foundations, fair enough. The thing that I find quite interesting between these two statements, so between Bungie and SIEs, is the fact that Bungie says that following our final content update to Destiny 2 and with our future projects still in early incubation, specifically future projects still in early incubation, and then SIE say as they work on incubation efforts for future projects. I don't know if I'm being weird, if I'm reading too far into it, but this strikes me as slightly disjointed because the Bungie one would lead me to believe that they have projects currently in the very early stages of incubation, but the Sony one strikes me as they are trying to get projects into the early stages of incubation, which I think are two very different things, because the SIE one would lead you to believe that they have yet to be approved, but the Bungie one is leading you to believe that it has been approved and they're working on stuff, even if it is the very, very early stages. I don't know which one I would trust there. I almost would say Sony because they're the ones who own Bungie and they're like the higher ups, I suppose, but I honestly don't know. It's just a weird conflict that I feel like I'm seeing here. It seems as though around 400 employees have been let go from Bungie, which is effectively half the studio, but it does seem to be a range between Destiny 2 and Marathon, so the vast majority of the Destiny 2 team seems to have been laid off. However, they have kept some, it at least seems like at these early stages, and they've lost some of Marathon's team. The very interesting thing is that they also laid off some contractors, and specifically some contractors that were meant to be testing and helping ship the last hotfix for Destiny 2. And because of this, it is a bit unclear whether or not we're actually going to get that last hotfix. The Destiny 2 team on Twitter has been rather vocal on saying that they are looking into fixing things, but they can't promise anything. So we may not get the hotfix. On top of this, the studio head for Bungie, Justin Truman, has stepped down apparently, and this doesn't seem to be striking people as too much of a surprise because a lot of the Bungie higher-ups had some sort of deal with Sony and that vests or, becomes available or whatever you want to call it this year at some stage in the next few weeks, months. So there's a chance that his thing did come available and now he's stepped down. He came in after Pete Parsons, the notorious classic car collector, as the community knows him as, stepped down, which was last year. Also, apparently no successor has been organised or anything like that, so it is probably likely that Sony's going to install somebody to run the studio, which would make sense. I mean, they've now gutted half the studio. Destiny's not being made, it's just Marathon, and Marathon is very much a Sony push title. It wouldn't surprise me if whenever all of the higher-ups in Bungie leave, that Sony just starts plopping people in there. So quite a lot of stuff happened there. I have to say, I was expecting the layoffs in the next few weeks, not this week necessarily. I was expecting him to get at least the next hotfix out, but I suspect now that this has happened that perhaps the Destiny 2 team were just going to keep pushing out weekly hotfixes until they got laid off, so we may never get that hotfix. We can probably just be glad we got last week's. I'm sure we will find out what teams exactly have been laid off at Bungie in the next wee while. I'm not entirely sure if the community team have been hit, for example. I imagine they probably have, because I was checking the Destiny 2 team account. Obviously there's been nothing there. They just retweeted the Bungie statement, and DMG hasn't posted anything. He's just been retweeting colleagues that have been laid off, so we'll have to wait and see what teams have been left. There maybe is just a very small skeleton crew for Destiny 2 now. Maybe they will manage to get another hotfix out and see how that goes. It is of course very sad to see that the layoffs have actually happened. I was holding out some sort of hope that it wouldn't happen, but that was a very small slimmer of hope, I have to say. But hopefully the devs that have been laid off manage to bounce back fairly quickly and get employed elsewhere. It's never really been an issue of developer talent, which I think became very evident with any time they've had like an actual real hit. So Forsaken, for example, was incredible. Beyond Light was really good. Witch Queen, Final Shape. I mean, even the thing is, like, even Lightfall was really good. It was just let down in terms of story, and that seemed to just be because they had to split Final Shape. And then this last update with Monument of Triumph really highlights, I think, that the team were listening to us the entire time, but they were likely being held back by the higher ups, where we've heard reports that that is what was happening, but obviously it's never been properly confirmed. So it's never seemed to be a case of developer talent, so it's really sad to see that the developers always get laid off in these scenarios and not the higher ups, and instead the higher ups get big cash balloons that vest after a certain amount of time, and they get to leave and collect all their money, and the devs are left scrambling for jobs. Does this affect the prospects of a Destiny 3 getting made? I don't necessarily know if I'd say that any more than I would have said it yesterday or a few weeks ago, because you would need a very small team in order to incubate a project, and then it gets fleshed out over time, to my understanding. So even though they've laid off a ton of people, they could in theory still incubate a Destiny 3 or a Destiny spin-off or something like that. So I wouldn't say that's off the cards. It is a very successful franchise, and everything everyone's said for the past few weeks. I will remain hopeful, but I'm not going to say it will happen, because who knows. This does mean, however, the prospect of them rolling back their end of service announcement on Destiny 2 has disappeared, which I was secretly really holding out for. I didn't think it would happen, but I was very like trying to summon it, and obviously that's not going to happen given that they've laid off half their people. So this is officially the end of Destiny 2, which is very sad. But fingers crossed they managed to incubate something Destiny related. But honestly, I think at this stage, we just need to hope that Bungie themselves don't dissolve, because I think the chance of that happening is probably higher than what we would like to think. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I will probably make an update video if there's anything else announced, and I would just like to collect my thoughts and then sort of dump them at some stage. See you in the next one. Bye bye.